Hello there, Ian Cathcart here, Flemington Hallside Parish Church, and it is Thought for the Day. And this morning, going off slightly different angle, this is Wednesday morning, Wednesday the 24th. Last week in the Herald, the reporter Rosemary Goring, in an opinion piece, one might say attack piece, her opinion was headed under the headline, "Kirk's cruel plan to banish elderly from services is a disgrace." As I'll mention through the point that services is precisely what's not on offer. A building and your pew is what's on offer. The difficulty being, for most folks, that's not enough. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. I just wanted to kind of hopefully reassure folks, but equally give you a sense and a flavour of what the article's about. As lockdown eases and the danger of coronavirus persists, parishes are being asked whether their over 70s should return to the pews when churches reopen, or if it would be more sensible if they were to stay at home connecting remotely or not at all. The ability to read between the lines is necessary not only for biblical exegesis. I'd always been taught reading between the lines was the absolute opposite of biblical exegesis, but hey, I'm just a Church of Scotland minister. Not only do you need to read between the lines for biblical exegesis, but for anything issued by 121 George Street. Rarely is anything spelled out, and this latest edict is no different. It's funny, she has a pointy stick and she's not afraid to use it. She quotes this document issued by the Church of Scotland. Congregations should ensure that those who are in the vulnerable category would be appropriately supported in their choice to participate in church life in a way that meets their own individual needs and preferences whilst safeguarding their own health, safety and welfare and those of the wider congregation. It's the kind of sentence that comes out of a document that's meant to actually address a generalised sense of helping Kirk sessions work out, do we open, do we not open? However, that nuanced analysis is not really what sells newspapers, and it's certainly not what in Rosemary's mind. Such weasel words are excruciating. The vast majority of the Kirk's most devoted and loyal followers are over 70. Some will be dedicated lifelong attenders. It seems invidious to talk of them as universally frail category. Nobody will really sit down and say, "I'm past it," or "I just can't be bothered." People want to be involved. People take part in stuff. And if you maybe shouldn't, it's kind of not always what people decide to do. Are people over 70 able to make the decision for themselves? Yes, they are. But it's hardly a Stalinist dictatorship to suggest that the Kirk session probably should think things through and make a decision for that particular building and that particular congregation. I was told the joke by an over 70 about an over 70s couple. It was rude, but it was also funny. The wife says to the husband, "As the grandchildren left, we could go upstairs to the bedroom and make passionate love now." And the husband says, "We are in our 70s now. We can go upstairs or we can make mad, passionate love. But we have to choose, because we certainly can't do both. I accept that they have, the over 70s, the ability to make the decision themselves. But sometimes it's appropriate for the church to say, maybe think this is a bad idea right now, given the fact that this particular virus has a particular penchant for people who are over 70, over 80. It targets you. Perhaps it would be wise to acknowledge your age. Rosemary's not of a mind to do that. The idea of banishing or consigning the elderly to a Zoom link or a virtual coffee morning until the virus has fled is cruel. No, it's not. It's loving. Right now, gathering together, sharing Christian fellowship might kill you. I really have no idea how anything other than that can be interpreted as the loving thing to do in this situation is to not mix, but to shield. However, Rosemary is in full flight and is no mind to be brought down. To withdraw all prospect of real human contact is particularly egregious at a time like this. Many have been longing to get back to their place of worship, but will now be worried they are not entirely welcome. That's an immensely crass and stupid thing to say. We really care about you. We think we might kill you if we all get into the one space. But hey, if expressing that makes you think because you're over 70 that I don't want you in the church because you won't be welcome, that is absurd. But this is what sells. Stushy, acrimony, division, that's what sells. It's lockdown. We have such a palpable shortage of ministers having affairs with people who are Sunday school teachers. This is what we have to put up with instead. This is an indication of one thing and one thing alone. Being a journalist now is really tough. You have sub-editors saying, Rosemary, you understand the readership of the Glasgow Herald? Do you? An article, almost, I would say roughly half a page on the Kirk. They're just going to bypass it. If it's all about nice people doing nice things to older nice people in their 70s, no one's going to read it. So Rosemary, please do your job and give us division, vitriol. This Christian, loving, caring, hates this Christian, not so loving, because he said some nasty things about that person. Can you give us fights? Sexual scandals, always preferable, always. But in the absence of that degree of hypocrisy, can you just give us some loving, caring, compassionate Christians howking lumps out of one another and being not nice? Because it makes everybody else who reads the Glasgow Herald feel so much better. It's not so much that they feel better, it's just it brings everybody down to the same common base level. That's what I read between the lines, not of the Church of Scotland document, but of this article. However, let's not deny Rosemary her concluding comments. In showing such caution and cowardice, the Kirk has forgotten the principles of which it was founded. It's always good for Rosemary to remind us of the principles that the church was founded. It is a Christian duty to tend the sick, befriend and the lonely, and to nurture every believer's spirit. This latest salvo smacks more of health and safety or fear of litigation than life-giving care and compassion. The Kirk has never been more necessary for all its members, but if there was ever a statement of its redundancy, this letter is it. So let me just say, if you are in some sense feeling that the church doesn't welcome you, if you're over 70 and we're making it hard for you to come along to and say, I can't call it a service, you can't sing, you can't have communion, you're not going to have a sermon, all the prayers have to be silent as by yourself. It's not me up at the front on the chancel praying my wee heart out. No, it's just private prayer. In other words, what I'm saying is everyone we have spoken to, and just to be clear, the Kirk session have already debated this, and the discussion basically said we should go and ask the folks, is there any big expectation of a demand to come back? Not to a service as such, but to an open sanctuary so that people can come in, have time with God. We've been doing thoughts for the day since this thing began. See if you feel you have to come into a church building to pray to God. With respect, you ain't been listening. There was the nuns and the Times, remember them? There's been the folks, the scientists who are Christians who are looking for the vaccine. There's been all kinds of people who basically it's to do with a relationship with God, and it's to do with the fact that you can pray to your Saviour and Lord in your front room. I don't think you need to be in a church building. I am, however, cognizant of the fact that if there's a big groundswell of opinion that if people want to come back to Flemington Hallside for a time of private prayer, then I think the Kirk session will be minded to hear that. But thus far, there ain't none. But Rosemary gives you the impression there's this tsunami of need that has to be inside the building. And I just think it's fairly obvious. Whether people have access to the YouTube service or the Thought for the Day or whether they have access or don't, most folks are doing their best to maintain the relationship with God and pray every day. You don't need to be in a church building to achieve that. Until there is the all clear and we can sing, worship, hear the sermon, take the collection, do communion, until we can just have like a normal service, what we're thus far hearing is people just wait until we can have that. A service, as it's been put to me, a proper service, not private prayer in a sanctuary. The point is, we can only go on the basis of what we hear. So if you think differently, if you think Rosemary is speaking for the masses, then let us know. It's just thus far, I can't tell you who I think she's speaking for because that would probably go on some other website. Rosemary's wrong, but she does indicate the state of journalism and the need for big stooshy. That's what we're going to report on. And if it wasn't this with regard to the coronavirus lockdown, it would be something else, as long as it's a big fight. Because that's the only thing that people want to read in the Glasgow Herald when it comes to the Kirk. Nice folk singing nice hymns, saying nice words, not interested. Sorry if this is a rant, but I think I get to say I didn't start it. Go with God, because God goes with you at home, in the garden, down to Morrison's, or even in a church sanctuary. The point is, God goes with you everywhere. You can speak to him everywhere. Your relationship and how he guides you is one where that guidance is experienced everywhere. Having been such a devoted Church of Scotland family, might have been quite good if she had actually focused on that and growing up. Go with God, because I know he goes with you everywhere.